Hello everybody, my inclusive tarot decks. If in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, please watch my first videos in which I challenge the concept of inclusivity, and I also show the limits, the most common mistakes made by so-called inclusive tarot decks. I have seen a lot of videos about inclusive tarot decks recently, so I thought why not make them into a tag so we can find each other more easily. What about my inclusive tarot decks or my inclusive decks? Simple but efficient, right? I have about 24 decks to show you, so obviously they're not gonna all be making it into a single video. So we'll be having 2 videos. Let's say this one is going to be... I came up with lovely tarot decks for this video, and the next one is gonna be wonderful, because my very favorites are gonna be in the next one, which is not to say that in this video you're going to see decks I don't like. They are in my collection. I love them, I already do. But I have so much I had to do 2 videos. I'm going to talk about Liminal 11 because it's a fairly new publisher that has set the intention of publishing decks that are rather inclusive. I'm not 100% happy with every deck, and for example this one, the Modern Witch, is certainly not my favorite. I like to have it as a reference deck, Rider-Waite-Smith clone, but yeah, I've never been a very good person for this deck. We never totally matched. It's just not my aesthetic, primarily. It's very digital artwork, which is not really my thing, and also it aims to be queer and very inclusive, like all range of people and blah blah blah. You see that in their communication about this deck, where I'm like, yeah, right, 3 kind of fat people. No, everybody, every possible range of diversity means fat people as well, or I'm just gonna feel left out, and I really don't like that, because in Belgium, for example, so-called obese people are 1/5 of the population. This deck is made by someone who lives in the States, so it's closer to almost 1/2 of the population. Seriously, how come we are not on it? Doesn't work with me, but it's a very pretty deck, and it's a reference when it comes to classical, traditional Rider-Waite-Smith inspired deck with a modern take on it. The Gentle Tarot, it's so gentle, it's so sweet, it's so empowering, it's so witnessing, it's so comforting. It's a feel-good deck to me. Maybe it's one of the reasons why I actually don't use it as often as I could. And also my butch keeps using it. So I used it when I initially exchanged it last summer, and it was a very beautiful summer deck. And then my wife was like, oh, actually, I can see myself working with it because it is so gentle, and she's not so much into tarot. She doesn't use tarot so much, and can be quite triggering for her, some cards. And so these ones are really soft, really nice and gentle with her. And maybe because I'm more experienced as a tarot reader, I don't really need gentle decks. Not for my everyday use, at least. So she uses it, and it's the only reason why I'm showing it in this video, because actually it's so superbly inclusive, and without trying, in a very spontaneous, organic way, that it's just perfect. It's just perfect, really, it really is. Then maybe they are not, doesn't feature so many people, so yeah, but when they are, there is diversity and representativity. I think it's also one of these decks that is created by a person of color. Gentle Tarot is a treasure. It's a very, very dear treasure that I'm very happy to have in my collection, and that I hope I can use a little bit again this summer, and I will maybe sneak under my butcher's table and be like, oh, it's mine now. Seven of Swords style. Moving on. This is another one of those decks that's absolutely beautiful, but I don't really relate with the artwork. It's the Tarot of the Divine by Yoshitani. Inspired by legends and fables and tales from all around the world, I over modified it. Okay, the edges are quite cool, but I couldn't stop. It doesn't look like that when there's not someone that did too much in her creativity and that does so many weird things to it. That's okay, it's my copy. I enjoyed the process of customizing it. I like it. It's very digital kind of artwork, and it's really not my thing. Actually, it's probably the main reason why it's not a deck that I use at all. I like it. I like the point of it. I like the intentions. I like the all around the world aspect of mythology and tales that are explored in it. But it's just, yeah, visually not my thing. Sadly, I wish I could use it more, but it's just not my aesthetic, and it's very beautiful, but if we don't match, we don't match. Next. I don't have a very big connection to this one either, because it's the Tarot de Go. It's a French deck by Emiskill, and if you say French, sadly, too often you mean Marseille deck, and listen, I'm just not into Marseille. So this is a really cool deck, major only, about rappers. And it's really pretty, it's very inclusive. I just don't use Marseille. I had another really cool deck, Marseille as well, very queer. It's called the Weird Wisdom Tarot by Le Page Novembre. It was really amazing. I will drop the links down below because I want you to get to know it. But because I don't use Marseille, I just gave it away to a friend. I want to buy Marseille to support the artists, especially when they are auto-published, self-published, like those decks. But yeah, I don't use Marseille, so at some point you just have to give it to other people. Fat Folks Tarot. I'm so happy. As you might remember from my first video, I wrote a Fat Tarot column for Little Red Tarot years ago, 4 years ago, and honestly, a tarot deck with fat people only by fat people, it's everything that I have ever dreamed of. Now, quite honestly, it's all made by different artists. And to me, there's a lack of cohesion. I can't get over it. It's hard for me to be using it. It's kind of nice for a card of the day. It's too bad, but it's still like a dream come true, and I will never forget that. It's a treasure. It's a treasure. I love this one because it's special. It's the Hollow Valley Tarot. You have characters on the court cards, and not those, and the major arcana, so about half of the deck features people, because there's a lot of symbols on every card. The characters are not necessarily the main focus, but it's still nice that there's a choice of diversity in the representations. I wouldn't say it's the ultimate inclusive deck for me, but I would say it does a pretty nice job. Look at the sun. And my wife sews the most beautiful tarot bags. This one is made out of umbrella, so that it is waterproof. And in this little bag comes the Guided Hand Tarot. It's another deck that I find really pretty, but I haven't been using a lot lately. I'm not always 100% sold on the diversity. I mean, why is the person wearing a scarf stealing the swords away? Doesn't sound right for me. It was released in 2018 and it's now 4 years ago, and it was still pioneering in a way for me to have so much diversity in the deck at a time when we were like so actively waiting for it. It is also so very nicely done. I like this. I like collage. I come very much from the zine culture and DIY culture, and I don't always relate to digitally done sort of going into database, stock image kind of collage. This is very unpersonal for me. So I really love the way that the collages are done on this one. Oh, it's in order. Proof that I don't use it that much. Let me jump further. A lot of white people still. It has a nostalgic vibe to it, maybe very 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, from what I can tell, in the kind of magazine skirt and everything. I like it. Well, when you have older stuff like this, it's probably 20s or maybe even late 1900s. The Urban Tarot is a tough tarot deck that is mostly tough, but also RWS inspired as well. It is dedicated to the city of New York. Robin Scott, the artist, spent a lot of time creating this deck. It's a very nice project. I'm just certainly not fascinated by New York especially, or necessarily, and I don't know. It's not my world. It's not my. I like the idea of an urban tarot, and I hate the idealization of nature and living out of civilization, off the grid in tarot decks. This is, come on. Most of us do live in big towns or city, so I love the city representation in a deck. It's just not for me. Not for me, but I sure love that it's a tough deck with a lot of diversity. It's very, very, very important. And we have another deck with its own kind of structure and very tough inspired, which is one of my very, very favorite decks. It's the New Chapter Tarot. It's another Liminal 11 deck and I love it. I saw online that a lot of people do complain about the quality of the images. Honestly, the person, Catherine Briggs, who is the creator, used watercolor to create this deck, and I think the rendition of watercolor is just really nice with it. I don't see a problem with the deck. I mean, it's not pixelized. It's because you do watercolor on grainy paper. So yeah, I don't know what people are complaining about. It's this kind of actual watercolors with probably very little retouching. Can we rejoice in it? I love this deck. I love it. It's stuff inspired, but not too much. So I'm happy with it. Yeah. It's a dear favorite of mine, and look, it's tiny, and for someone with tiny hands and an Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it's just perfect. The creator designed this deck as homage to what she was going through, which is moving from Great Britain to back to the States, and the people we can see on the cards are the actual people that were part of her New Chapter back in the States, I think. So there's something really real in that, in seeing real people of the person's life in the cards. I now realize that I intended this one to be in the next videos because it's one of my favorite decks, and I wanted to speak about another Liminal 11 deck, but let's switch. But you got the gist of it. It's one of my absolute favorites. There's another one that I want to put in this category, but it's only coming home tomorrow. So it's gonna be in the next video because I'm not gonna have it now. It's not here. Look, my hands are empty. Hands. Why don't I pronounce the H when there's an actual H? And why do I pronounce it when there isn't? Oh, because I'm tired, right? Inclusive deck. Okay, so I have a chronic illness and it's telling me that it is time to stop. I see you tomorrow with the 2 other decks. I'm back and it feels like years since I started filming this video, but there was an unexpected death in my family, so I had to cut short and I'm only coming back now. But you won't know, right? If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know. So you probably hear a cat in the background. It's because Bablut is just talking with the pigeons right now, because that's what she does. What's so important that can't wait? Oh, yeah, I'm so busy. Let me go. I'm actually still busy modifying this one. It's the Everyday Enchantment Tarot. That part is done, and this one isn't. I'm just rounding the corners. What shall I say about the Everyday Enchantment? It's a very sad story because I heard about it, or I started paying attention to it at least, when her creatrix, Poppy Palin, passed away. What I love the most about it is that, as you've seen maybe here in the full card, there was someone who was a construction worker. It's very inclusive of working class people, and I think it's really interesting, and it's something we do not see that often in tarot decks. Now, when it comes to fatness and other things, I might not be so... I don't connect that well with it, I'll be honest. But yeah, I think it's something that we tend to forget when we talk about inclusivity, is the visibility of class and how we render class visible. in our decks, and it's something that's usually also very like sort of pathetic, and yeah, I don't know, like with a kind of meritocratic framework maybe, and a lot of despise for the working class. And this deck is just the contrary of this, and yeah, it's an important contribution, I think, to the tarot world. The Fool here is a perfect example, I think. I'm sorry, the light isn't perfect today. Another Liminal 11 deck is the White Numen. It's hard for me to present it because, as you can see on this card specifically, there's a glorification of, I think, thinness and certain types, certain body types and shapes, and kind of male gaze. For me, I know it's not, the person who created it is not male, but I feel that in the way that bodies are represented, and does make me feel uncomfortable. And I'm really sorry that decks that claim to be representative fail to include disabled bodies and non-thin, non-skinny, in this case, bodies. I'm really sad. That's still a reality, but however, there's various representation that you don't always see on other decks, and I still like it very much. Very quickly, some out of print deck. This is the Astero, and it was originally published in 1984. There was a second printing a couple of years ago. Sadly, it's ran out pretty quickly, but we still hope that we'll be able to see it on the market again, because we need decks like this one, old feminist lesbian deck. So fingers crossed, but I'm not showing you more because at the moment it's very hard to find it. Same vein, of course, the Slowholder Tarot. I'm very sad, and a lot of us are, that it's not gonna be reprinted. I think we can say it for sure now. There was at some point some possibility, some openings, but it went nowhere. So the Slowholder is probably not gonna make a comeback, but it was a very queer deck, and yeah, I'm sorry, I won't show more. I know it's always hard when you missed a deck that is so rich and unique, but yeah, it's my one-of-a-kind deck. And moving on with more rather historical decks, it can be hard to show older decks because there are some things that are outdated or that we would take into account now when it weren't back then, like trans representation, for example. But hey, this is still important historically, and it's Daughters of the Moon Tarot in its Dutch version. It's not out of print. You can still buy this Dutch version on tarot.nl. And what else can I say about it? It's a collaborative deck, but one of the creators who kept making it available died 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And as for now, I don't think it's that easy to find it in English, but maybe it is, and I just wanted to show this big round deck that has a historical importance for feminist decks, and that is also sort of dated. The heat is very bad in Belgium right now, and my allergies are really bad as well, which means that within a couple of minutes I'm gonna have a lot of little wounds in my mouth because it's hard for me to produce some saliva. LS Denrose and its endless ramifications. Yes, okay, so I have to cut short, but it's okay. It's enough for these first videos, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you again for the next one, because it's going to be about my very, very, very favorite inclusive decks. See you soon!